FYF Sportsman, it's Lamont. We are back with another podcast episode. Today, man, we got a very interesting topic to touch on. Look, and you know what? This is actually kind of intriguing because it's not directly sports related, but it does affect what we do in this specific field. And when I saw this video, I said I have to share this with you guys and give you guys my perspective on it, because it does go to show and emphasize a point that we've been talking about and preaching on this channel over the last couple of weeks, man. So we're gonna touch on that today here on FYF Sports. Before we get started today, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell if you haven't done so already. Man, the year 2022 is the year of 100K subscribers here at FYF Sports, man. No exceptions, no excuses, man. We gotta get there. We gotta continue to grind. Man, we're kind of growing at a slower pace than normal. Last month, I think we gained about 500 subscribers. Man, we got to pick it up, man. You guys got to help us. Share the videos, like the videos, man. Help us out in that algorithm so we can continue to expand and grow this platform right here, FYF Sports. But today, man, this video was something that I wanted to touch on. And as you guys always know, we like to bring a very unique angle to some of this. So we're going to be reacting to a video that I saw on CNN, right? And if you guys are living under a rock and you don't know what's going on in this social media specter right now, man, Joe Rogan and the Joe Rogan podcast, a very popular podcast that's on Spotify. You see his videos all over YouTube. I mean, the man is amassing literally billions of views a year. I mean, easily one of the biggest podcasts out there, and most definitely the biggest podcast on Spotify right now. But he came under fire recently after an interview with another controversial figure by the name of Jordan Peterson. You guys, again, just scroll through social media. If you haven't checked the interview out, I want you guys to go watch this video, right? And in this conversation, they literally touched on, I mean, all of the most sensitive talking points in today's era. They talked about the opioid crisis. They talked about the transgenders. They also talked about the pandemic issues and also climate change. These are very, very sensitive talking points, especially, look, I don't like to play the political thing, but again, liberals, it seems, they get very sensitive when you hit those specific talking points. Just like Jordan fans, when we have to ether them, man, you guys know how sensitive they get when we have to drop truth bombs about Michael Jordan. And it seems like CNN, this particular network right here, we've already ethered Fox News, right? We've exposed them in a different video, right? But now it's CNN's turn. CNN is now taking aim at Joe Rogan in this particular segment. When I watched this, I said, this is absolutely disgusting for a media outlet like CNN to be going at another media outlet such as Joe Rogan. And it is very weird because in this segment that I'm about to play, they're talking about Joe Rogan giving out misinformation. But the last time I checked, CNN, you guys aren't the most credible source for news either. A lot of misinformation has been put out on your end. A lot of people have exposed it. Yet it seems like CNN has the nerve to go after a guy like Joe Rogan simply for sitting down, having an interview with a person about multiple topics and allowing this person to express his thoughts on these general topics, right? Outrage. People went crazy over his takes because they thought his takes were just crazy, outlandish. Some people even labeled some of his takes as misinformation, right? The AMA even labeled some of his takes as medical misinformation. I mean, this man literally, he upset the equilibrium with the LGBTQ community. When you got your climate change heads over here going bananas, you got your transgenders that are absolutely, he hit literally on a little bit of everything and upset the balance, right? For anybody that's mostly liberal in that particular direction, I told you, they're just highly sensitive and they don't like it when other people simply speak their mind right? And that's the only thing that I saw happen in there on the Joe Rogan podcast. And generally what I do, if I'm listening to a podcast and I hear something that I don't like, well, I'll just turn it off and I'll go listen to something else. It seems like there are a lot of people that actually sat down and listened to everything that Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson had to say. And now the cancel culture is after Joe Rogan and his particular podcast. And the one thing that I am proud of is Spotify. They stood up for Joe Rogan. They got his back. And I want you guys to really take note and listen to what one of the executives from Spotify had to say as to why they are backing Joe Rogan. But we're going to play this clip. Look, we're going to stop it. We're going to start it. We're going to do whatever we have to do. But we got to react to these clips. I'm going to do my best not to stop it a lot so you guys can just hear how hypocritical CNN has become. And this is one of the reasons why I've stopped really digesting information from one specific news outlet like CNN and Fox. I really like to dig and do my own research and come to my own conclusions, because all of these networks seem to have some type of agenda. And right now they have their eyes set on Joe Rogan. We're going to go ahead and get to the video.
Misinformation and making money off of it. Disinformation, I should say. Joe Rogan has been at the center of controversy for comments that he's made about the pandemic and vaccines. Spotify has been pressured to do something about it, but it stood behind its most popular podcaster. And now Rogan is under fire for some new comments from an episode this week. CNN's Paula Newton joining us live from Ottawa. What happened here? What did he say?
Yeah, Brianna, this was quite an epic conversation. And the issue is here, people tune into Joe Rogan because there are no guardrails to the discussion. That's why they listen to him. Having said that, many commented that this conversation just went right beyond anything that they found was valuable. Many called the discussion ignorant, and some found it incredibly hurtful. Listen.
Not for the first time, the Joe Rogan Experience featured contentious Canadian psychologist and author Jordan Peterson, this time for over 4 hours in a free-ranging, reductive back and forth about topics Peterson has no expertise in: climate, race, the transgender community.
So you think that a lot of what's going on with people that want to change their gender identity is creativity?
No, I don't think so.
So what do you?
I know so.
This misinformation on climate.
There's no such thing as climate, right? Climate and everything are the same word.
And this one on race.
I am white. Actually, that's a lie too. I'm kind of tan, and he was actually not black.
If you're tan,
he was
what
sort
the
of brown.
am I?
The he is scholar Michael Eric Dyson, who told CNN's Don Lemon Rogan and Peterson misinterpret the very definition of race.
They're playing to the ignorance of their audience, but they're also, exposing a kind of lethal ignorance about the very nature of race itself.
Peterson did not respond to CNN's request for comment. In a statement to CNN about the content of the podcast, Spotify, which has exclusive rights to Joe Rogan's podcast, said, "We won't be commenting on this." But many on social media sure did.
Oh my God. I'm not black.
Delete Spotify began trending. Some accused Rogan of platforming hate. Monday, musician Neil Young, fed up with Rogan's vaccine misinformation, told Spotify to choose between him and Rogan. They removed Young's music. Lies being sold for money, Young declared in a statement. At issue is certainly money. Rogan's podcast is one of the most popular in the U.S. and beyond, although Spotify has, at times, removed content that is deemed inaccurate or offensive. Legal scholars say any move to censor controversial speech is in the hands of private companies.
And those private companies have a lot more flexibility on their own to make decisions, either to regulate speech and try to shrink the space of this kind of discussion, or to provide very robust protections for speech that don't provide very many restrictions on what people can actually say on their platforms.
Just gonna pause it briefly right there. So again, about halfway through the video, I want you guys to really kind of digest some of the things that you heard. Just right out the gate, you heard the host here on CNN just simply It seemed like they were doing everything. See, what they were doing right there was if you aren't an avid watcher of the Joe Rogan podcast, what they were trying to do is now they're trying to portray a very descriptive narrative of what they believe his podcast is, or what they want you to believe his podcast is. They're trying to label his podcast as misinformation, dishonest, putting out lies, is hate, right? So now they're putting into your mind this descriptive narrative of what they feel his podcast is. And remember, the only thing that Joe Rogan did was sit down and have a conversation / interview with a Canadian by the name of Jordan Peterson, who we all know the Jordan Peterson things that he said on Joe Rogan's podcast are things that we've heard him say on a number of other podcasts. The problem here is that he actually sat down on one of the biggest platforms in front of so many eyes and did so for about 4 hours, really diving into some of the hottest topics that we know CNN loves to push. CNN loves to push race. They love to push climate change. They love to push the LGBTQ community and the transgender or arguments that favor the transgender debates and community. So that type of information does CNN no justice. And then when we talk about the COVID thing, again, anything that he says related to COVID-19, everyone wants to label it, oh, it's medical and misinformation. That's what they say. And so anytime it's just very weird. And, I have to believe that CNN has to be taking, they have to be taking instructions from the American Medical Association. When the American Medical Association came out and said social media networks must crack down on medical misinformation. Right? People have been saying crazy things with regards to, medical practices and things. They've been saying that ever since YouTube's been created. It really wasn't until the COVID-19 struck that now everyone's medical opinions have to get censored, and no one can have an opinion on what they believe is true or false. No one can give a critique on their own experiences, right? And now you're seeing even doctors who push back against what the norms are or what the popular belief about COVID-19 is. You're seeing actual licensed doctors get their social media channels and YouTube pages taken down because they're getting labeled as medical misinformation, and they're actually doctors. It's very weird what's going on in this social media sphere right here. I'm going to finish and allow this to play out because I do want to get to the comments that Spotify eventually made in regards to this. I think that just kind of sums everything up. And I think those comments from Spotify expose what CNN is trying to do here. All right. And I don't think the host had a legitimate answer for it. And for me, it's just actually an angle that even when I initially looked at this, it's an angle that I didn't even look at. We're going to finish playing this video. I want you guys to hear how one of the execs from Spotify really laid down a statement that can be likened to a Max Ether on CNN, and just kind of left the host kind of get baffled with really no real response. Let's go ahead and get back to the video.
Yeah, you can say that again, no restrictions. Now, it might surprise some. There is not really a legal or legislative remedy here. Many say it's up to people like Neil Young to, quote unquote, delete Spotify, right? We have not seen that take hold, Brianna, not at all. And, I had a chuckle that, some people were asking, who is Neil Young? There weren't many people at least, asking who is Joe Rogan. He's incredibly influential, and many people do listen to his podcast, upwards of 10 million a day in the United States alone. And these controversies are likely to continue.
Hey, are they mad because he has a big platform? Right? Are they mad because his platform has gotten popular and it reaches so many ears that people can hear these unique opinions and perspectives on these different issues? The only thing that Jordan Peterson did was give his opinion on some of these issues. Yes, controversial at that, but they do make you think. They do open your eyes because it's a new narrative. That's the same thing we do here on FYF Sports Debates. We like to invite, regardless of what your opinion is, how crazy it might be, we like to bring people in so we can at least hear your opinion, right? It might be far out in left field, but you might bring a new element to the argument that no one has ever just even considered. We can't just shut people out, right? We see channels like that. You see sports channels out here in our sector. They love to just shut people out, block people who have certain beliefs in certain players because they want to push a certain narrative, right? I strive to not do that on this channel, but we see CNN, she kind of exposing herself right here, because now when you start talking about his views, his viewers, how much reach he has, it almost sounds as if you're only going after him because you know a lot of ears are listening, and you don't want those ears to hear this type of information, because you're going to have a lot of people asking a lot of questions. And it seems like CNN wants people, just the same way they started this video, how they told you about Joe Rogan's podcast and they labeled it as dishonest and misinformation because they want you to think that even if you haven't seen a Joe Rogan video, it seems like they're trying to craft a certain narrative, and they're just simply upset that Joe Rogan may be opening people's ears and minds up to a different train of thought that and this ideologies that go directly against some of the messages that they push on CNN. Very odd right here. We're going to go ahead and finish this up. I just wanted to make that point right there.
I will say there are people out there who know who Neil Young is and they don't know who Joe Rogan is. So important to note. Paula, thank you so much for that.
As for the role of the platforms, here's what Spotify's CEO told Axios last year about why he doesn't feel like they have a responsibility for what is said by podcasters.
We have a lot of really well-paid rappers on Spotify too that make tens of millions of dollars, if not more, each year from Spotify, and we don't dictate what they're putting in their songs either.
So what's the difference between, say, rap lyrics and a podcaster pushing election lies? Do you buy that excuse there from the CEO?
I think there's a link there where I think that argument falls flat or deflates, Jim, is that any content a rapper is putting out, or even strongly held extremist political views, shouldn't be conflated with junk science that's spread and results in our ICUs being overrun. So I do think Americans and the courts correctly afford special protections or fidelity to medical information or the spread of junk science, as we're seeing with Joe Rogan. I would argue that, look, if you can reverse engineer some of Steve Bannon's comments to injury from an insurrection, that's one thing. And that obviously the courts would have to figure that out. What I think that Spotify will come under pressure for is when 270 doctors say that this is that Joe Rogan is a menace, and we have 850,000 dead Americans. More Americans have died from COVID than all combat fatalities combined in all of our conflicts. Even Section 230 has carve-outs for sex trafficking, for IP violation, and I think it's just a different ballgame when you start talking about junk science as it relates to medical topics. So I think they might have poked the wrong bear here. We'll see if other shoes drop, if you will.
Okay, a couple points to really break down right there. The man kept labeling again. See how they use terms to label what the information was on Joe Rogan's podcast. They called it junk science, right? Who made this guy the authority on what is actual science and what is junk science, right? When you look at Albert Einstein, a guy who had very little book smarts, book knowledge, college degrees, he had very little traditional education, came up with the theory of relativity. Is that junk science because he didn't get the traditional educational background that you generally see for most scientists who go to the MITs and all these major colleges and learn all this crazy stuff, right? How do people label what's junk science and what's not? I mean, because just like Albert Einstein, people labeled him crazy. People said some of the things that he did was off the wall, but we come to find out that a lot of the things that he was talking about are 100% factual, at least with regards to, and then it is now actually accepted as viable science. What makes CNN the dictator on what's junk science and what's real science? They're the ones. So are CNN the ones that okay what science we can digest? Okay, well, if this person says it is junk, but if we tell you this person said it, it's legitimate science. Then the guy digresses, right? He simply digressed from the point, because the Spotify CEO simply said, we don't tell our rappers what to put in their rap songs, right? And he tried to make it seem like rap music today doesn't have a direct correlation to some of the violence that we see in the streets. Drill music unquestionably has led to deaths of thousands and thousands of young black men, whether it's in New York or Chicago. It's already documented. Police are investigating it. Police use this music and these lyrics to get people locked up for hundreds of years. And even though this music has a negative impact in our society, especially amongst African Americans, CNN is not calling for rap music to get censored because it's doing so much harm to the African American community and to the minds of the young. They're not calling for that. This doctor's essentially saying, oh, you can't compare the two. The rap is okay. It's okay that this rap music is the way it's coming out, and some of this rap music, some of this drill music, it's okay that this rap music is tearing down African American communities. That's okay. Right? Because if you're going to make one argument against Joe Rogan, you start to look like a hypocrite when you don't make the same argument for rap music and how it's detrimental to the community. You either have to let it all go. You can't sit there and nitpick at Joe Rogan but not talk about drill music that's all over Spotify as well, and then be okay with that. And that's the hypocrisy. So, and then we talk about that here on this channel as well with our sports takes. We see people come with, remember, just like with the Jordan debate, people try to label Jordan as the GOAT for this reason. But when it comes to comparing Jordan to other players, they want to switch the argument up. Oh, we can't use that as different metrics at different times and eras. Similar to what CNN is doing right here. How they're trying to manipulate and control the narrative. Rap music that has a proven track record of causing deaths, similar to COVID-19, right? Whether you agree with some of the science behind it or not, they both have a track record of causing deaths. Yet when Joe Rogan speaks on COVID-19, it's detrimental to us people. It's misinformation. But the rappers who put out music, drill music, that police use to get people locked up, that police use to solve murders, that we see rappers speaking on the dead. We see rappers confessing to murders and other crimes in the rap music, right? We see all of this, but they want to let that go all by the wayside. That's okay. See, it tells you where their true agenda is. And this is from a supposedly woke network, a supposed woke network, right? That really pushes things like BLM, like Black Lives Matter. Really, that's supposed to be something that they actually care about. But we see them not talking about it, right? Because they're money-making talking points, right? The LGBTQ transgender debate and pushing arguments that favor transgenders. Again, we've talked about this as well. I don't mind what side of the coin you're on, but it's obvious what side of the coin CNN is on all of these topics. On climate change, we see what side of the coin they're on. And if you're on the side of the coin where you believe climate change is fake, right? Like Candace Owens is, yes, Candace Owens is crazy. She said a lot of crazy stuff. She's still entitled to her opinion and what she says. Similar to Jesse Lee Peterson. He's crazy. He says a lot of slanderous, detrimental stuff. But as bad as it is to hear, all I have to do is, if I don't want to hear Candace Owens or Jesse Lee Peterson, I just turn the dial. I turn to another station. I turn to another channel. That's the best way to cancel anybody. Just stop listening, right? But because they know people aren't listening, because Joe Rogan has a track record of giving out a lot of credible information, they can label this whatever they want, but people who watch Joe Rogan know that he does a lot of research. He's not a dummy. He brings on people. He doesn't just bring on people, but he challenges people's talking points. We saw what he did to Candace Owens on that show. He was one of the first people to simply absolutely ether and destroy what Candace Owens was saying. One of the only people to really contest her to that particular degree. Almost embarrass her off the platform, right? He's not biased towards any particular network, person, or political agenda. Just like Fox News, man, when we dropped the video, right? We saw Ivory Hecker. Hopefully I said her name correct. We saw what she did with Fox News and how she exposed Fox News at certain times, was manipulating the news so that African American viewers are not getting information on finances, money, stocks, and things like that. And now we see with CNN right here, right? When confronted with a very good example with regards to rap music, because rap music does have a clear history of being detrimental to the African American community. They're saying the same thing about Joe Rogan's message to his 10 million viewers. Yet CNN, when presented with this ideology, they digress and say the rap music is okay, but the things that Joe Rogan was saying, it's just going to absolutely destroy everything that we've been trying to build up to. We have to label it as misinformation. We have to cancel it. We have to censor it. Remember what the lady said in the beginning? She said something about guardrails up. She says people love going to listen to Joe Rogan because the guardrails aren't up. Well, why would people want to go to platforms where there are guardrails, right? So they can hear manipulated, censored information that's pushing a certain narrative. This is why people are going to platforms like Joe Rogan's, right? Because it's time and time again, platforms like CNN and even Fox News are getting exposed for either pushing political agendas or just outright lying about just basic, very basic news that they could just simply put out to everyone and just allow us to make the decision. If someone wants to believe what Joe Rogan and that information on COVID-19, that's fine, right? Because the thing is, if people are actually believing what he's saying on his podcast, well, that means real doctors and surgeons, right? And the American Medical Association, if Joe Rogan's able to sway these people's minds and you guys are trained doctors and professionals, you guys can't be that good at your job if someone who y'all say is not knowledgeable. When you talked about Jordan Peterson, they called Jordan Peterson not knowledgeable. They were essentially calling the man stupid, right? They're essentially saying somebody like Jordan Peterson is smart enough to sway the minds of everyday people over the expert advice of actual doctors. And the only reason people's minds are so easily swayed on these topics is because I think even networks like CNN don't even have real viable answers to the questions that are being thrown out there, right? You're not asking the right questions when the time comes, CNN, right? You're not really trying to find real answers. It's starting to look as if you're just pushing agendas, right, for political parties. And this is why you cannot, this is why, look, I'm not either. I'm not Republican. I'm not Democrat. I'm not liberal. I'm not none of this. I like to go with the side of common sense. Whatever makes sense to me, that's the side I'm gonna go with. It could be up, down, left, right. It could be Republican, whatever you want to call it. It could be capitalist. It could be socialist over here. If it makes sense for whatever is going on, for whatever we're dealing with, if it just makes common sense, then that's the direction I'm going with. CNN, you got to stop trying to control people's arguments. And if you feel like Joe Rogan's arguments, right, if they're not legitimate, then how about you guys work on y'all debate skills and combat everything that he said on his podcast with facts and logic, right? Come back with facts and logic as opposed to getting behind this cancel culture push, trying to shut down the man's platform because you don't like what he said. Come back with real science. Come back with real information. I know this guy right here started talking about ICUs being full, right? But ICUs have been full before the pandemic hit. It was hard to get a bed in the ICU unit before the pandemic, right? We talk about an example that's near and dear to me. When my mom passed, the pandemic wasn't going on, right? When my mom passed, the pandemic wasn't going on. She had to get put on a wait list She had to get put on a wait list to get a liver transplant. Hospitals are already backed up. Not only just a wait list for a liver transplant, but then once the liver became available, you know what the doctors in that hospital had to do? A group of doctors in that hospital had to decide, well, is this liver good enough for her? Right? Or should we give it to another patient who we think this liver might be better in? Right? That's essentially what it came down to. It came down to a group of doctors, these so-called educated scientists, basically saying, is this good enough for her? Right? When we talk about my mom, yes, she had cirrhosis of the liver caused by alcohol. Right? But the doctors wanted to judge her. Oh, she drinks. We can't give her a liver. She might recover and start drinking again and completely waste his liver. We need to give it to somebody else who we think doesn't have a drinking problem. Not that this person that we give the liver to might develop a drinking problem and might waste it all the same. This is how doctors do things. This is something that really happened. And so when people like Joe Rogan, which we don't know what he's experienced with doctors in his past, obviously he talked about his personal situation with COVID, right? His personal battle with COVID and how doctors told him one thing, he listened to information elsewhere, and the information elsewhere is actually what proved to be more beneficial. See, how can y'all label that medical information when people are given real life testimonies on their experience? How is that misinformation? If something worked for him, why is he not able to give his thoughts on it? Same with Jordan Peterson. We know how he feels with regards to the transgender debate. Right? We know his thoughts and opinions on it. So why does it surprise you when he says these things? And are you just mad because he elaborated on it and actually started to kind of give examples and descriptions of what this might really be? And now people are thinking, does it cloud some of the things that you've been pushing on your network, CNN? CNN, research purposes only, man. Y'all got to start doing your research, right? Here at FYF Sports, man, we went at people's takes. We've attacked people's takes. And you know what? Time and time again, when people can't combat us with takes, they try to cancel us. We've seen it happen with Ticket TV on this platform. Attack them with facts, basketball takes that are undisputable. What do? They attack us personally, try to cancel us, call us every name in the book that you can think of that doesn't apply to the conversation. We saw this with other YouTubers as well, coming at this channel. When are people going to start combating other people's takes with facts, as opposed to just crying about the take itself? This is the world that we living in here. This is why I had to talk about it. Right? Because there's a direct correlation to this platform. And as this platform grows and our voice gets bigger, will there be powers that don't like the message that we are putting out? You guys already saw us get our live streaming capabilities banned for 90 days simply for allowing you guys to come onto the live panel and speak your opinions about the Deshaun Watson situation. We were banned 90 days because somebody was in their feelings, reported the video, and didn't like what we had to say. That person could have easily came onto the panel, debated us directly, and gave their opinions on it. What did they do? They chose the cancel culture route. This is what CNN is doing to Joe Rogan right here. They have no facts to combat what was said on his platform. And because they lack facts, because they lack the ability to do real research, they've ran and jumped behind the cancel culture bandwagon, which is ultimately just sad. It's just one of the worst ways to go out, man. CNN just lost. I mean, look, man, y'all losing this. This is one of the reasons why CNN is another network that's labeled as fake news. This is why. Because now once people like me see this CNN, not anything else that you put out, even if it's true, I'm going to have to look at it with a side eye. Are you only feeding this to me? Are you giving me this information because there's some agenda behind it? There might be some information that they put out with good intentions, but how can you trust a network that's clearly doing something like this and then going out of their way to attack a fellow podcaster. I know although Joe Rogan is a humongous platform, he's definitely a fellow podcaster. So salute to Spotify for standing their ground, standing behind it, right? Bringing an intelligent stance on this that CNN couldn't come back with. They couldn't combat it with logic. They only combated it with hypocrisy and then tried to move on. Look, you ain't fooling nobody, especially us over here at FYF Sports, man. You guys spam up the comments, man. Let us know your thoughts on this particular topic. We have to get to the bottom of this right here. What's going on in the world today, man? Why is everyone, especially these major news outlets like CNN, why are they trying to silence the Joe Rogan podcast after that interview? Were there too many truth bombs dropped by Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan in that video, and they need to silence it and cancel it? Right? If you guys haven't watched that video, you need to go watch it immediately, because it looks like there are a lot of forces trying to take that man's platform down. It's FYF Sports, man. It's another great podcast episode. We are going to be back with more sports and news, right? Make sure you guys, again, like, share, subscribe, help us in the algorithm, man. This is the year of 100K subscribers. We got to get there. We are getting that plaque. And you know what the goal is after that. But come on, let's make it happen. Share the video. Let's get the content out there. If you got any show ideas, if you got any thoughts, man, make sure you hit us up on the live streams. Come up to the live. Give your thoughts on anything that we talk about. We could just chop it up from there. Hey, it's FYF Sports, man. Another great podcast episode. We're going to be back with more sports and news. But until then, it's FYF Sports. And we out.